On a clear, cold Thursday in March of 2003, 20-year-old Megan McDonald was building the framework of her own life. She had just signed the lease for her first apartment in the town of Wallkill, New York, a step into independence that filled her with the quiet excitement of a new beginning. That afternoon, March 13th, she completed her shift as a waitress at the American Cafe in Middletown's Galleria Mall, clocking out around 3 p.m. After work, she stopped at a bank, a mundane errand that would later become a fixed point on the timeline detectives would painstakingly assemble. By 7 in the evening, Megan was in the Greenway Terrace area of Wallkill. She was seen outside a home where a birthday party was taking place. Two individuals she knew chatted with her briefly in the driveway. They were friends, and they encouraged her to come inside to join the celebration. But Megan declined the invitation. She had other plans, she told them. She mentioned she was going to meet up with some other friends back in Middletown. This brief interaction, witnessed and later recounted to police, was the first public moment of her last evening. It was an unremarkable exchange, the kind that happens every day. There was no visible tension, no hint of fear. She was just Megan, a young woman who had places to be. They watched her go, and she drove away from the party, heading toward what she believed was the next ordinary event in her young life. The simplicity of this moment is what makes the tragedy that followed so jarring. Following her brief stop at the Greenway Terrace party, Megan McDonald drove to the Middletown home of one of her closest friends. She arrived around 7:30 p.m., settling in for what would be a long, quiet, and utterly ordinary evening. For the next 4.5 hours, the two young women simply spent time together, the kind of comfortable, low-key hangout that defines deep friendship. They talked, they relaxed, and they watched episodes of the popular television show Friends. There was no rush, no apparent anxiety, no looming sense of danger in that safe living room. As the clock neared midnight, Megan prepared to leave. She told her friend she was heading straight home to her new apartment. She had to wake up early for her waitressing shift, which was scheduled to start at noon on Friday. They said their goodbyes, and the friend watched Megan leave, assuming she was driving the short distance home to sleep. This was the last time this friend, someone who knew her intimately, would ever see Megan alive. Instead of driving home to her apartment as she had told her friend, Megan McDonald made a decision that would forever alter the course of the investigation. For reasons known only to her, she turned her white Mercury Sable back toward the Greenway Terrace party she had left hours earlier. The time was now well past 12:30 a.m., moving into the early minutes of Friday, March 14th. The party was still ongoing. Two different friends, separate from the ones she spoke with earlier, now saw her. She was sitting in the driver's seat of her parked car. They approached her window to talk. In this final, witnessed conversation, Megan offered a new piece of information. She insinuated that she was now planning to meet up with someone. She did not give a name, she did not specify a location, she simply suggested that another encounter was forthcoming. They observed her vehicle turn onto Cindy Lane. Then she vanished from their sight and from the documented timeline of her life. The street, Cindy Lane, became the last place she was seen by anyone who knew her. This moment is a fracture point. The reliable hour-by-hour accounting of her evening ends here. Everything that follows is reconstruction based on forensic evidence, phone data, and the testimony of individuals who did not know her. The transition from being seen by friends on Cindy Lane to being found on Bowser Road is the dark space the investigation has struggled for 2 decades to illuminate. By midday on Friday, March 14th, a palpable and growing worry had taken hold of Megan McDonald's family and friends. She had not shown up for her noon shift at the American Cafe. This was profoundly out of character. Megan was responsible, and missing work without a call was not something she would do. The first calls to her cell phone went unanswered, then more calls, then frantic calls. Her mother, Elizabeth, could not reach her. Her sister, Karen Whalen, who lived 2 hours away with her husband James, began dialing repeatedly, leaving messages that shifted from curious to concerned to desperate. As the afternoon wore on with no word, the quiet alarm bells ringing in their minds became a deafening siren of dread. They knew, in that way families know, that something was terribly wrong. The mundane reality of a missed shift at a mall restaurant transformed into the first official indicator of a crisis. Her coworkers knew it, her manager knew it, her family felt it in their bones. By Friday evening, the family's private fear began to transform into a formal search. They were contacting anyone who might have seen her, retracing the steps they knew. They were confronting the terrifying possibility that the vibrant, fierce young woman they loved had vanished into the cold March night. At 1 p.m. on Saturday, March 15, 2003, the worst fears of Megan McDonald's family were confirmed. A man and his nephew walking the property at 229 Bowser Road in Wallkill discovered the body of a young woman in a desolate, overgrown field. The location was a narrow dirt path leading to a small dirt cul-de-sac, a secluded spot known locally as a hangout for teenagers to drink and smoke. It was not a place one would stumble upon by accident. You had to know it was there. The men immediately contacted the New York State Police. Responding troopers identified the victim from the driver's license in her pocket. It was Megan. The news, when it reached her family, was a devastating blow that shattered their world. While the grief was overwhelming, there was a grim, small mercy in the swift discovery of her body. The remote nature of the crime scene spoke volumes to detectives. It indicated planning. It indicated a killer who knew the area, who felt confident they could commit a violent act there without witnesses. The seclusion of Bowser Road suggested Megan had likely trusted the person or persons she was with enough to drive to such a lonely, dark place. She would have been apprehensive otherwise. The site itself became a silent witness, telling police that the act was intimate, brutal, and intended to be hidden. The discovery here, just over 48 hours after she was last seen alive, set the clock for investigators. It gave them a firm endpoint for her life and a starting point for gathering evidence before it could be scattered or degraded by the elements. From this moment on, the mission for her family transformed from find Megan to find who did this to Megan. The discovery of Megan's Mercury Sable on March 17th at the Kensington Manor apartment complex added a crucial, puzzling piece to the investigation. The car was parked haphazardly as if abandoned in a hurry. A resident reported it had been sitting there since approximately 8 a.m. on Friday, the morning after Megan disappeared. The vehicle became a treasure trove of forensic evidence. Inside, the story grew clearer and more horrifying. The evidence suggested Megan had been killed while still in the driver's seat. The nature of the blunt force trauma indicated the blows came from directly behind her, from the rear driver's side seat. This led investigators to a chilling theory. Megan had driven to Bowser Road with a passenger she trusted in the front seat. A second individual, likely following in another vehicle, had then entered Megan's car and taken that back seat position behind her. This was a calculated setup. The crime scene analysis combined with this theory painted a picture of a targeted personal attack. Over 700 individual items of evidence were collected from the vehicle and the scene, each one a potential thread to pull. The car's condition and location also helped close the window of time for the murder. The Mercury Sable was not just a piece of evidence, it was the primary crime scene, a metal container holding the secrets of Megan's final terrifying moments and the forensic ghosts of those who were with her. For years, the investigation into Megan McDonald's murder progressed slowly, marked by dogged police work but hampered by a lack of conclusive proof. A significant break came when a witness from the Kensington Manor apartments, re-interviewed years later, provided a vital new detail. She recalled that early morning, around 12:30 a.m., she had been drawn to her window by the extremely loud sound of a car stereo. Looking out, she saw Megan's distinctive white Mercury Sable with a black stripe. Directly behind it was a dark-colored hatchback car. The two vehicles circled the apartment complex's parking lot loop together. This testimony introduced the ghost car, the hatchback, and suggested Megan was not alone when she arrived at the complex. The description of the hatchback eventually led investigators to focus on a specific vehicle, a 1990 purple Honda Civic hatchback, registered to the mother of Edward Hawley, a man in his early 20s who had previously dated Megan. Hawley had been a person of interest, but now he had a concrete link to the scene through a vehicle matching the witness description. Meanwhile, another scientific avenue was opening. Advances in DNA technology allowed a private lab, Cybergenetics, to re-examine old evidence in 2021. Their analysis found that Edward Hawley's DNA was present in an inclusionary manner on swabs taken from Megan's personal cell phone. This suggested he had handled her phone. Later, they would also link his DNA to the rear driver's seat of her Mercury Sable, the exact position from which the fatal attack was launched. The once cold case was now generating heat from two directions: an eyewitness account of a car tied to him at a key location, and his DNA found in the most incriminating places imaginable inside Megan's vehicle. The culmination of the 20-year investigation arrived on April 27, 2023. Edward Hawley, then 42 years old and confined to a wheelchair following a 2007 car accident, was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. The arrest was based on the totality of evidence: his documented relationship with Megan, the financial motive concerning a debt, the witness account of his purple Honda Civic hatchback at the scene, and the damning DNA links to Megan's phone and the rear seat of her car. Cell phone analysis also placed his device in the same general areas as Megan's on the night she died. Upon his arrest, Hawley professed his innocence to reporters, saying, "I loved her with all my heart. They're framing me like some monkey, but it's all good." However, this moment of legal reckoning was short-lived. Due to a procedural rule in New York State requiring a felony case to be presented to a grand jury within 6 days of arrest, and the district attorney's office stating they were not adequately consulted for such a swift timeline, the murder charge was released. Hawley remained in custody only on a separate probation violation. The case was handed to a special prosecutor, leaving the formal murder charge in legal limbo. For Megan's family, this was a devastating roller coaster. They had waited 20 years for an arrest, only to see the suspect walk free on the murder charge within a week. The fight, however, was not over. The evidence gathered, the DNA, the car, the witness statements, remains. The family's resolve hardened. They continue to speak out, ensuring Megan is remembered not as a cold case file, but as a vibrant young woman whose life was brutally taken. And they maintain fierce hope that the legal system will ultimately deliver the full accountability that has been delayed for longer than Megan was alive. With that, we have come to the end of today's episode. I thank you all for your time. Don't forget to drop a like if this video touched you in any way. I will be seeing you on our next episode.